Our relationship goes way back before then, so you are very blessed to have her in your presence, and I am very blessed to have her as a friend. Well, good evening, everybody. You're going to have to bear with me as I get used to feeling like a robot here. I wasn't prepared for all the hookups that I have here today. So just bear with me as I work through this presentation, and hopefully you'll get something from this. So, how do we get from there to here? So when you look at that title, you probably think that there is you, the student, and here is you as a professional. And you're right. That's exactly what I meant then. But I need you to understand that there and here will change throughout the course of your life. So I want to kind of broaden that explanation a little bit more, or define there and here a little more. So when someone asks you a question, where do you want to be? If you answer, I want to be there, there indicates that the place that you are presently standing is not your desired location. It's where you're temporarily there, but you're on a journey to get to somewhere else. That's your there. If someone were to ask you, where do you want to be, and you were able to respond, I want to be here, that means you've arrived. You've gotten to that destination that you were seeking, and you've made it. That's your here. But again, remember, you're there and you're here. They're going to change throughout the course of your career. Here is not static. Things are going to change. So here is always a new destination, and there is a journey that you're on. Okay? So, I'm hoping that today I'll be able to give you some information that will help you navigate all of your theres and all of your heres. So let's get started. Here, as I said, is defined as your place of success. Do you think success looks like this? No. Because that's a straight path to somewhere, right? Success is probably, maybe not a straight path to somewhere. But most people, however, seem to think that that's what it takes to get on the road or path to success. It's a straight road. And as you're traveling along that road, if you can't handle it, they expect you to move over, get in the slow lane, and then you exit on that ramp of failure. But get out of my way so I can blow by you and get to where I'm going. That's what people think success is, according to this, most people think. However, most successful people know that success looks a lot different. Success has a lot of twists and turns in it. They have some detours in it that are beyond your control. But it also has some things that will happen to you that will delay your success. And there are things that you did have control over, but perhaps it was the result of a breakdown because you failed to maintain your vehicle and the way that you're going to get there. So, let's begin. So the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. So let's get started. And when we get started today, what I'm talking about is beginning the road from your there to your here. I'm talking about beginning that journey that's going to get you to your path of success. So we're talking about now starting the car. And this is the interview. The only thing I can tell you about an interview, prepare for it. I have had the opportunity of interviewing several collegiate students in the last couple of weeks for an organization that I'm a part of. And in that process, I learned a lot of things that I would really like to share with you guys. Again, I told you, you need to be prepared in an interview. Okay? You need to do some research on that company. You need to do something that's going to set you apart. There are thousands or even hundreds of other people applying for that job that look just like you on paper. How do you set yourself apart? You doing a little bit of research about the organization will help you with that. If you're given the opportunity to ask questions in an interview, please have some ready. Make sure they're appropriate, but ask questions because that's your time to demonstrate that you are interested in the company. It's time for you to demonstrate that you have some type of knowledge about the company. You also need to recognize that when you're in an interview, it's not just about them picking you, it's about you picking them. So this is an opportunity for you to ask questions to make sure that the company that you're interviewing with is also a good fit for you. And if you are asked if there is anything else that you would like to tell them for them to help them in their evaluation process, have something to say to them. That's the time that you demonstrate or you reiterate your skills. You reiterate your strengths, reiterate your interests. That's an opportunity for you to give them a closing statement, to talk about your qualities that maybe didn't get covered inside of that interview. That's the time when it's best for you to have your elevator speech ready. So do you all know what an elevator speech is? Everybody's shaking their heads. Okay, I just want to be clear. One thing about the elevator speech. How long is it supposed to last? About 30 seconds. So the amount of time it takes for you to get from the first floor of a building to the top floor. So that is generally about 30 seconds unless you're in the World Trade Center. Otherwise, that's about as long as it should be. Okay? Alrighty. So the last thing I want to say to you about an interview is make sure you practice. Just like driving a car, before you were able to go anywhere by yourself, you had to practice. And you practice with family and friends. Okay? So if you have an opportunity to do some mock interviewing, take advantage of that. But if you don't have an opportunity to do mock interviewing, practice with family and friends. It doesn't matter. Because before you could go anywhere, like I said, in a car, you've got to practice. You've got to practice. And the reason you do that is to make sure you're prepared for the different scenarios that may come your way. You do it to make sure that you learn how to transition more smoothly while you're on the road. And you do it with family and friends so they can help you identify some of the bad habits that you may have that could be a detriment to you as you're out there traveling on your journey. Practicing for an interview is no different than practicing driving a car. You do it to prepare for the different scenarios and the questions that may come your way by the interviewers. You do it so that you can answer those questions more smoothly and be more articulate. And you do it so that you can identify bad habits that you may take into that interview room that could be detrimental to you in securing that job. I told you that I had worked with some people or had been interviewing some collegiate students. I kid you not when I tell you this person that I was interviewing cracked her knuckles the whole time. I got a reaction for that. She did, and I don't think she was aware of it. That's why you practice. Someone can call that to your attention. That didn't fare well for her in that situation. Okay? So, all right, we're in the car. Car is running, and you've received a phone call that you have now received the job that you interviewed for. So we're going down a path now. We're starting to move. And that picture of the car is not the car that you're going to get when you get the job. It's just showing you that we are moving. We are moving down our path. So every time I take a trip, I like to start out with a nice, clean car with a full tank of gas. Why? Because I do believe that when you look good, you feel good. Okay? And I feel better as a driver when my car is clean. And I actually think my car runs better when it is clean and it has a full tank of gas. But now, is that really true? Is my car really running any better than it was 30 minutes ago just because I got a clean car and a full tank of gas? Or is that just my perception because it changes the appearance? It's probably just my perception, right? Well, let's talk about perception for a second. So if you had a top shelf chef to prepare a meal for you, and it's your favorite meal, and he takes a portion of that meal that he's prepared, and he puts some of it on a silver platter, and he puts some of it on the lid of a trash can, which one of those would you choose? The silver platter, right? Okay. That's because your perception makes you think that the cleaner one is the better one. But all things being equal, that meal was prepared from the same place. If you were going on a trip on a journey, which one of those cars do you want to drive? All things are the same. They're both equal, right? They're both BMWs. You can tell that. Which one would you choose? The one on the right or the one on the left? The one on the left. Why? It just looks nicer, so we're talking about appearance, right? All right. So, you told me that you would choose the silver platter, and you told me that you would choose the cleaner car. In this scenario here, all things being equal, this is the same person. If you were an employer and you were going to promote someone, which version of him would you promote? The one with the tie. Do y'all agree with that? Okay. The one with the tie. All right. So you hold that thought for just a moment, because I have news for you. I know that this job that you just took was an entry-level position, but as soon as you walk in the door of that building, you actually have been promoted to manager. And that manager is a manager of yourself, at least. So just recognize that throughout your career, whether you have people reporting to you or not, you are always managing at least one person, and that is yourself. Okay? So one of your first assignments as a manager is to manage your image. So we just talked about the choices we make based off of the presentation. So we generally go with the cleaner, more polished option. And we also agreed that as an employer, you would choose the person who has on the tie, who's also cleaner or more polished as a candidate. So knowing this fact, how are you going to show up on your first day of work? So remember, the first impression is the lasting impression. So how are you going to show up on the first day of work? As the saying goes, when we meet someone, we form an impression within the first few seconds. Okay. The part that you don't know is that when we then spend the rest of the time justifying that very impression that we got. So it's very hard to overcome a first impression. The reason being is because of our unconscious bias. See, our brains, they kind of work to prove us right. So once we get a belief about something, our brain starts to filter out any information that is contrary to what we already believe. This is why it's very hard to overcome a first impression. That's why it's lasting. So if your first impression is negative, it's very hard to overcome that. But if your first impression is positive, it's also very hard for somebody to challenge that and say that you are something other than you're not. So you need to make sure that as a manager, you are managing your image to make sure that you are leaving a very positive first and lasting impression. All right. So I mentioned I like a clean car when I'm going on a journey and that I like it with a full tank. And the reason why is that because when you look better, you feel better, and I believe that it has something to do with the performance. So when you start on your journey at work, you need to go in with a clean body and a full tank. And by that I mean, when you get there, you need to be nicely groomed. You need to be appropriately dressed. And you need to go full of energy, which means you need to get a good night's rest. So when you get there, you are energized and you're ready to perform. And then if you continue those attributes throughout your career, as we've already proven, a better performance is perceived, whether you are a better performer or not. All things being equal, if you are maintaining yourself and you have a better image, you're likely to be the candidate that's chosen over another person who is not maintaining such attributes. So now we're moving on down the road a little bit. Let's say you've been in this job for a little while, you've learned your day-to-day tasks, so you're ready to start branching out and doing some different things. Okay? So this is where you have a lot of opportunities for success, but you also have a lot of opportunities for failure. Because now you have an opportunity to start dealing with people, to interact with people. And I would tell you, dealing with people can be some rough roads ahead. So in Tennessee, you get your driver's license at the age of 16. But you're not allowed to drive with more than one person because this is a time when you need to be learning yourself. You need to become secure as a driver, and you need to learn how to navigate the situation by yourself, know what you value, know what's important to you before you start introducing any types of distractions that could cause harm to you or somebody else. And this holds true both in your personal and professional life. You need to make sure that before you start bringing other people into your mix, that you know what you value, that you know who you are. So in this instance, you are the vehicle, and you are the only vehicle that can take you where you want to go. So you've got to maintain yourself. And in doing so, you've got to know who you are. So one of the places to start in trying to identify who you are is through assessments. All right, so there are several assessments that are out there, but there are 4 that I see on a regular basis. One of these is the Myers-Briggs type indicator, the DISC profile, personanalysis, and then strengths finders. So I used to not be a fan of any of these assessments because none of them told me exactly who I was. I didn't think they painted an accurate picture of me, because back in the day, what would happen was we would take these tests or these surveys, and they would gather this knowledge about us, and then someone would come visit us, and they'd have a training session, and then they would interpret what these results meant to us. So when that happened to me one time, I was told that I was an introvert. And then I was also told that as an introvert, I like to be alone, and the best or ideal job for me was one whereby I did a bunch of transactional work where I could keep my head down all day and did not have to interact with a lot of other people. That was so not me. So I did not believe in these assessments. And so eventually, though, I had the opportunity to hear from someone who knew a little bit better about these assessments. So thank heavens for the internet, and thank heavens for other people who had more skills, because I finally found out that an introvert or an extrovert, we're really just describing your energy and how you derive your energy. So as an introvert, when I have downtime or I need downtime, that's how I recharge. It has nothing to do with me being some shy person who wants to sit in a room by herself, not interact with anybody, and give me a bunch of tasks where I can keep my head down and not have to make eye contact with anybody ever throughout the day. Because again, that was so not me. So again, in these assessments, they are readily available. There are usually a lot of abbreviated versions of them on the internet. So the Myers-Briggs type indicator is really about psychological behaviors and giving you tools to understand who you are. The DISC profile also addresses your behaviors, and it does so in what it calls a non-judgmental way. Now, personanalysis and strengths finders, both of those address your strengths. And I'm not taking personanalysis, but I have taken strengths finder. And that one spoke well to me because I'm a firm believer that you need to operate inside of your strengths rather than struggling to perform a job that your weaknesses are called for. That takes a lot of energy. So, I would recommend using those as a starting point to finding out who you are. And you can also get involved in some activities in different organizations that will also provide these assessments for you, and they will happen at no cost. So I was in a program called Leadership Chattanooga, and that's where I was first introduced to the DISC program, or the DISC profile. And that's where I got the best interpretation of who I am, through that one. And then I went to Women Mentoring Women, which was a program offered by Chattanooga Women's Leadership Institute. And that one is where I experienced the strength finders. And again, I told you that was the one I think that was most beneficial to me because it spoke to who I am as an individual. It spoke to my strengths, and it spoke to who I was uniquely within each one of those broad categories. And strength finders also has a strengths insight report that it gives you, as well as an action plan to be successful with your strengths. So again, I'm an advocate for working inside of your strengths and not struggling to work inside of your weaknesses, because work by itself is hard enough. So now that we're moving a little bit more down the road, and you've understood a little bit better who you are, know that you have some choices now. And you can start to get involved in some different activities and even some different organizations. So I would caution you to seek out organizations that support your growth. Seek out organizations that support your values, both inside and outside of the workplace. And this is another way for you to maintain your vehicle. Think about what kind of programming these organizations offer. How will they be beneficial to you? Are there opportunities for you to use your skill sets and your strengths? Are there opportunities for you to hone some of your weaknesses? See, everything is not a best fit for you, and your time is precious. So when you get involved, do so wisely. If you start to spread yourself too thin, you'll find that you're not doing anything well. And if you're not doing anything well, what does that do for that image that you're supposed to be managing? Because if you find that you are spreading yourself too thin, sometimes you get overheated, you get overexhausted, and you end up breaking down, or you have to take a break at a rest stop. Whatever the reason, when you have to stop, you are no longer on the path to success. So you need to be selective in the activities that you get involved in. And if you know your value and know the things that you value, you need to focus there. And now that you know your value, you can probably appreciate the value of other people. So let's graduate a little bit and let's move on down the road to where you're starting to introduce some of your relationships with other people. Does everybody recognize this principle? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. As you're trying to navigate your theirs and your heres in the workplace, do you think this is all you need to get you through? Do you think this is an adequate way to handle people, to kind of navigate some of those or avoid some of the possibilities, the successes and failures in dealing with people? Would this rule apply and be helpful to you?
Yes.
Somebody says no. You're actually right. The golden rule generally will work. But in your day-to-day interactions with people, as you start to work with people more and more, you can't treat people how you want to be treated. You have to treat people how they want to be treated. Case in point, let's say you have a friend who loves Kit Kats. He's your best friend, okay? And he knows that you love Snickers. So every day on his way to work, he decides that he's going to stop by the convenience store and get him a cup of coffee. And while he's there, he thinks about you. What does he get you when he's thought about you? He gets you a Kit Kat bar. Now, I know you would appreciate the Kit Kat bar because he thought about you. But what he's actually doing is he's treating you the way he wants to be treated. And I know you would appreciate that, but would you not appreciate getting a Snickers bar a little more? Would you not appreciate or feel more valued if he gave you what you wanted as opposed to what he wanted? Okay. Same thing goes in the workplace. This is your best friend, right? So he knows you. So he ought to know how to treat you. But that's what happened. He's managing you through his perception. And again, this holds true in all relationships. You've got to give people what they want. So the more you interact in a relationship, you have to treat them the way they want to be treated. Have you ever heard of the book, The 5 Love Languages? 5 Love Languages and Love and Respect. These are why these books are so successful. Because they're teaching people how to treat the other individuals around them. Because that's the key to any successful relationship, is treating someone how they want to be treated. So now let's think about this a little bit more, of treating people how they want to be treated inside of the workplace. Thinking styles, or even learning styles. You have a talker, you have a listener, you have a thinker, and you have an experiencer. So I'm going to demonstrate each of these, and then we're going to see them in a different scenario. So let's say that you have a friend who just got a grill. And when he got this grill, you really loved this grill. So eventually, you were gifted a grill of your own. But when you got this grill, it was not assembled. Okay? If you are a talker, what you would do is you would open up the instructions, you glance over them, and then you would call somebody. And when you call somebody, you say, hey, I just got this grill. This is what I'm thinking about doing. I'm going to do A, B, C. And you're talking to them not to get feedback from them. You're basically just kind of thinking out loud. That's what a talker is. Now, a listener would read the instructions for the grill, but then they'd call that same friend who has the grill already, and they say, hey, I just got this grill. How did you go about putting this together? A listener is wanting to gather information, and then they'll take that and go act after that. Now, a thinker is going to read the instructions, Then they're going to count out all the pieces and make sure everything is there. Then they're going to go to bed and sleep on it. And they will get up the next day and put it together. That's a thinker. And then the experiencer is not going to read anybody's instructions. They're just going to start doing. And at the end, when things are left over, they think that's just extra. Okay. That is an experience. Well, these thinking styles are present in the workplace. Okay. And let me tell you, you're going to experience all of them. Because when you graduate from here, projects don't end. You're still going to be doing projects when you get in the workplace. You're still going to be going to classes. The only difference is we call classes meetings now. But you're still going. And you're going to have to deal with all these people. So as you encounter these people, you need to know how to treat them for your success. So let's say you are a project manager or a team lead on a project, and you have all of these thinking styles present. Let's suppose that before this meeting, you did not send out an agenda. So you have this thinker, remember, is the person who wants to meditate on things, to think it over. You've called this person into a meeting, and they have no idea what it's about because you didn't give them a heads up. When they get in that meeting, they are not able to contribute. They're probably going to leave that meeting frustrated and not feeling very good about themselves or about you because you didn't give them opportunity. Also in that same meeting, if you never provided an agenda, when you get in there, the talkers are going to railroad the meeting. They're going to continue to talk if there are no boundaries. And the only person sitting in this room that's going to be happy is probably the listener. Because as all this conversation is going on, they're gathering information. And that experiencer that's sitting there, that experiencer is mad because they want to go get out and do something. But if you spend all your time talking, they can't act either. So now what you've proven yourself to be is unorganized and someone who runs an unproductive meeting. What does that do for your image? Because if someone were to come and ask how you run meetings, what type of person are you? That thinker, that experiencer, that talker, they don't have very positive things to say about you. And that can be damaging to your image. But if you were to just have a meeting and provide an agenda ahead of time, that's giving that thinker an opportunity to meditate on what's about to come. So when they get in that room, they can contribute. When they leave that room, they feel good about themselves. You've then, with an agenda, put boundaries up. So the talkers are not going to run away with the meeting. They'll get their information out, the listener will receive information, and the experiencer can then go do what he needs to do in a timely manner. Now everybody's winning, and your project gets done, so you look even better. So what does that do for your image? So you have to think about that. As you are managing your image, you also need to know how to value and treat people and see them for who they are. And I'm going to tell you, if you are the person who is running an unproductive meeting, people are going to avoid you like those potholes on the left. But if you are somebody who's doing what's right and giving everybody an opportunity to grow and contribute, people are going to want to ride with you like you do on a nicely paved road. So you just remember that as you move forward. Remember that you need to treat people the way they want to be treated. Okay, so now we're moving on down the road a little bit. And we've come to the network. Highways and interstates. Those are really networks that serve to get us to some destination a little quicker, right? A little quicker than a 2-lane road. So earlier when I told you to get involved in some different organizations, when I told you to build some relationships with people, all I'm telling you to do ultimately is build a network. And networking can happen in a number of ways. And I'll tell you, when I was coming out of college, I had a bad experience or a bad example of networking. And I didn't want anything to do with networking based on what I had seen. Because all I knew was it was a time for me to go to some gathering and hopefully make a connection with someone. And there was a gathering that I went to at one point, and my experience was someone named Kim came up to me and she said, "Hi, I'm Kim, what do you do?" Okay. in my head I heard, "Hi, I'm Kim, what can you do for me? If nothing, I'm moving on, bye-bye." And that's what she did. And after that, I thought, why would I subject myself to such a superficial exchange? But again, thank heavens for people who have some training. Thank heavens for the internet where I can learn and read that that's not the best way to do networking. There is a possible way to do networking and do quality networking. And so what I would say to you is, as you're building your networks, find a way that's comfortable for you. And it can take time. It does not have to happen quickly like that speed dating experience that I had with Kim. It can take time and it's okay, but you just need to find what's comfortable for you. And just know that in a networking situation, it's not about what you can get from somebody. It's about what we can do with each other. What can we do for each other? That's how you build a quality networking experience. And also know that networking is essential, because there are many positions that become available that you never hear about because they got filled as soon as they became open. And they did so because of networking. So I told you earlier that I participated in a Women Mentoring Women program through Chattanooga Women's Leadership Institute. I got in that program because someone recommended me for it. And that was my first introduction to CWLI. But years later, I've been on the board to CWLI. I've been on CWLI's board for 5 years now. I know that came from relationships that I built in that program. I also know that the person who recommended me for that CWLI program also recommended me for Leadership Chattanooga. And then in Leadership Chattanooga, I met some people who recommended me for another board. So you see, doors and opportunities open, even if you're an introvert. That comes through networking. So again, just do your networking in a way that is comfortable for you, but make sure it is with quality and make sure it's a mutually beneficial relationship. A few weeks ago, my boss and I were talking, and he shared with me that hard work will get you wherever you want to go, but he said it's going to take a lot longer without a network. So make sure that you have a network in your life that will serve to be an interstate for you to expedite your path to success, as opposed to the two-lane highway that's still going to get you there. It's just going to take a lot longer. So now we've moved on down the road even more. We're at the point where the terrain is starting to change, and we need a little help. So we need the help of a navigation system. And in that navigation system, or by that navigation system, I mean you need a mentor, or you need a sponsor, or an advocate. And what's the difference between those? The mentor is someone that you talk with. So a mentor talks with you. But a sponsor or an advocate, they talk about you. So a mentor does not necessarily have a lot of influence over your career. That's somebody that you sought out because you needed some advice, or someone that you consult for guidance in different types of areas. They don't necessarily have a lot of influence. They're, in an essence, kind of like what you would think a flagger is in a construction site. Matter of fact, someone who's helping to guide you, again, they don't have a lot of influence on how you're driving your vehicle. But a sponsor is very heavily invested in your career. In fact, they know your career trajectory. They're probably in your line of or chain of command somewhere. And they are out there putting themselves on the line and their reputation on the line because they're recommending you for roles. So in that sense, they're actually kind of paving the way for you. So that's the difference between a sponsor and a mentor. And can a sponsor also be a mentor? Absolutely. In fact, sometimes you may not even know that there's a sponsor out there advocating for you. But that came because of your image. And somebody stepped up for you and recommended you to do something. And I actually have gotten 2 of my last jobs because somebody was out there advocating for me. So these relationships, they're important. But I will caution you, when you are looking for a mentor, you need to make sure that you are selective about who you allow in your life. I was at a conference about a year and a half ago, and the former CEO of McDonald's, Don Thompson, he was one of the speakers. And in that session, he shared a piece of advice. And he just said, I would just caution everybody to make sure you are careful about who you allow to pour into your life. He said he cannot tell us how many times he has gone to some speaking engagement, and when he walks off the stage, several people approach him asking him to be their mentor. Mind you, these people never laid eyes on him before 20 minutes ago, but they're asking him to be their mentor. And he said all they know about him is that he has reached some level of success. But they don't know how he got there, they don't know his morals, and they don't know his values. Be careful who you allow in your life. So the best mentor and sponsorship relationships, they're built on friendships. That way you know who you're dealing with. Because you don't want to get mixed up with the wrong person. That could be detrimental, and it could absolutely derail your career. So I want to tell you a little bit more about these mentors and define it a little bit more. A mentor can be somebody that is internal or external to your organization. They can be above your level, they can be on your level, they can be beneath your level. You can get mentoring from anywhere. So don't think it always has to come from somebody above you. If this person is knowledgeable, if they have some attribute that you need, they are a viable candidate for being a mentor. Now, in a mentor relationships, it can be short-term, because everything there's a season. Some things you're going through, it's just a short-term experience. And once that comes to pass, you no longer need that mentoring relationship. And that's fine, that's acceptable. But then there are some things you go through where a mentor is in your life for a lifetime. That's also acceptable. But now a sponsor is generally going to be internal, because remember I said they have this internal influence over your career. And that they have influence, and so therefore they have to kind of be inside of the organization to help navigate your path for you. And that relationship generally is going to be a long-term one, because this person is going to bat for you. They're putting their relationship, their reputation on the line for you. But any of those relationships, you've got to remember that it's a two-way street. Oftentimes, as I said, we tend to think of a mentor as somebody who's above you. And so we kind of sit back and wait for them to tell us what to do. This mentoring relationship has to be a mutually beneficial relationship. And 9 times out of 10, that person does already have something that you're trying to get. So it's probably more beneficial for you to be in a relationship with them than vice versa. So if they don't meet with you, it's probably not even going to hit their radar. You've got to be the person to take the initiative and make sure that you are establishing that relationship, that you're keeping it intact, that you're following up on conversations, that you're letting them know where you are. You've got to keep that connection. That onus is on you more so than them. So just know that that is a two-way street. All right, so we're finally around the corner, and we're at the end of my here and there. I think I've probably said a lot. I hope that you could follow what I've said, but I just want to recap. In the beginning, to get started, you've got to start the car. And starting the car, that is you being prepared for an interview. Remember, if they give you an opportunity to ask questions, do so. Once you get a job offer, you're going somewhere now. You've got to make sure that you're maintaining that vehicle of you, and you've got to make sure that you're managing that image and the relationships in which you're involved. As you're traveling, use the interstate. Make sure you have some networks in place, because that's going to get you there much quicker than that 2-lane road we've talked about. And then through your mentors and your sponsors, you make sure you heed their advice. They're your flaggers and they're pavers, and they're making the way for you. So this probably says it best. I know you can't see that probably all that well. It says the road to success is not straight. There's a curve called failure, a loop called confusion, speed bumps called friends, red lights called enemies, caution lights called families, and flats called jobs. But if you have a spare called determination, an engine called perseverance, insurance called faith, and a driver from above, you will make it to a place called success. So I know you have courses on this campus that have told you everything that I've just stood up here and told you. There's nothing new under the sun. But I do believe that the more you hear something, at least it takes about 3 times for you to hear something before you actually get it. So today I'm just doing my part. I'm making sure that you get it just one more time. And hopefully that will help you to navigate your way from here and there. Because this road, the road to success is always under construction. Always. You cannot rest, but just know that you can get there. So have safe travels on your road from there to here. Thank you, guys.
Renee, do you guys have any questions you would like to ask Ms. Alford? This is your time for Q&A.
Yes, ma'am.
You said that mentors could be on the level, at your level, above or below.
Mhm.
Have you ever had a mentor that was below your level?
I have never had a mentor that I would call a formal mentor that was below my level. But sometimes just seeking advice from someone, I have had someone who was not on my level, but who has done some things well that I've just had conversations with, maybe just gone to lunch. So if you want to call that a mini mentoring relationship, then yes, I have.
Is it possible to have any mentors in your life?
Absolutely. Because you may have someone that's in your personal life as a mentor from that aspect. You may have a mentor at work. So there are many different facets. Someone told me he recommended that you have at least 6 mentors. That sounds to me to be a bit much, especially when it's that two-way street where you have to manage those relationships. But he was talking about, having a mentor that's kind of the next level up from you, then someone who's above that level, and then someone who's above that level. And then in both different facets of your life. Yes, sir.
Do you have a mechanism for internalizing failure and then turning that into something constructive?
For me, if I feel like something's not going well, I do just kind of use that to fuel me so that it doesn't happen again. I don't think there's nothing wrong with failure. In fact, I went to some TED Talks today. I think you guys were there, and they talked about failure. For me, the only thing that I guess I would call a failure is if I didn't do anything about it, or if I didn't learn anything from it. A friend of mine told me one time there's only lessons and blessings. And so when something happens to me, if I don't do anything about it, that's what I would call a failure. But to me, I think I see anything that doesn't go my way as a lesson, and then I'm going to do something about it so that I don't repeat it again. So ultimately, I think it turns into a success. Yes, sir.
You said that networking opportunities don't need to look like the speed dating kind of. What would those kind of opportunities look like?
That's when you maybe you're just going somewhere and the relationship just naturally happens. So as you're at maybe some event, something that you like to do. Say if it's art or something, you go to a gallery and you just happen to meet somebody. Well, you obviously have the same interest if you're both in the same place. So then you just start to develop relationships like that. Just slowly, with a conversation, because again, I'm telling you the foundation that's best is to have a friendship. So that way you know what you're dealing with. And that person has the best interest at heart. So sometimes just let them happen naturally. To me, I don't do well with the ones that seem to be forced. And then I'm just looking for those things that we might have in common. And it may be some time before we identify what it is that we can do for each other. Yes, ma'am.
Following up on that, things in common, do you mean like, oh, I also want to be an auditor, or do you mean like, I'm very interested in quilting as well? What kind of,
It can be both.
okay.
Yeah, whatever starts a conversation. So I don't go out the gate just talking about what I do. I'm first trying to connect as a person. And that's just me. I like close personal relationships. And so I'm not really concerned with that other part first. If I can't connect with you as far as values, or if it's evident that probably you and I are not going to be friends, That's what I'm more concerned about first. You know, and what you do for a living, that's secondary to me. Any other questions? I see none.
All right, thank you so much, I appreciate